Welcome, Marty.
Hello.
Hello. Today at our Filmteractive Festival, I have the pleasure to welcome and introduce Marty Tudor, the CEO of BASE Hologram Productions. Marty leads his team in all aspects of creating and producing the company's breakthrough holographic productions. Marty, welcome. Before we start, I just want to let our listeners to know that it will be possible to pose questions to our guest, but we think it's best if we have that session of Q&A by the end of our talk. So please write your questions on chat on Facebook, and I will read these questions for Marty to answer by the end of our talk. And now we would like to show you a few fragments of Marty's works to get us into the mood of our conversation. Before I ask you about the technology itself, which is very interesting, I would like to ask you about the whole origins, because when the word concert comes to mind, I think about the artist, obviously, but also the crowds, the musicians, the whole vibe and the whole auratic experience of being in a concert hall. And we could also see that on the on the videos, that people that are going out of your concerts, your experience, your productions are super enthusiastic, and they do have the feeling that they actually had seen their favorite artist. And my first question is, how do you work on recreating this whole authentic and very much unique and genuine feeling of being at the concert when the hologram is on stage, not a real artist?
Well, that's a very complicated question. The simple answer is you have to step back and look at the artists as a whole first, and get a sense of who they were and what were they like on screen, because we're not really doing concert per se. We like to say we're doing a show, which is a little different, but it is essentially a show, because it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end to it in terms of the flow and how it builds up to a certain level for the audience throughout the show. And then in terms of getting the artist right. So creating Whitney is a very elaborate, lengthy process. It took us about 9 months to create Whitney. And it's a very time-consuming project. A lot of your people here, I assume, are in the film and or television business, so they'll understand some of this. But we had, in order to get the look right, we had to hand touch 360,000 frames. We created this in 8K, 60 frames per second. So it was a lot of heavy lifting and work. But the end result, as you could see from the video, I mean, your brain just immediately begins to accept that is a live person on stage, especially the way we do it, where we surround that avatar, for lack of a better way to describe it, with live people and live elements. And if the quality's good, you can truly trick the mind to believe that is a person up there.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the jargon. I don't know, from your company or maybe from the whole market. You use the word recreate these artists. I was thinking if you can also use it as, I don't know, resurrecting or like maybe hologramming. Is it the word you should use, that you're creating an artist?
Yes, or recreating an artist rather than resurrect, because resurrect has a whole different connotation to it, you know,
Sure.
and we don't want to get caught up in that. We're not trying to bring the artist back to life. That's not what we're doing here. What we're doing is celebrating the artist's talent and giving an audience a chance to experience that all over again. We're not trying to say, okay, Whitney's not dead or Whitney's back from the dead. We're not trying to say any of that. I mean, we're being very, very respectful. And when we do these projects, we do them in very close collaboration with the artist's estate, so that we get it right. I mean, we want it to be as authentic as possible. And so we work very, very closely with them.
Sure. I'll ask you more about the technology in detail a little bit later on. Before that, I want to ask you, how do you select the artists that you're producing, the shows? Of course, they are iconic to the whole world, but I want to ask you, were they maybe your favorites, or is it the whole team choosing the artist that you're recreating? Or I don't know, you chose Marii Callas, Whitney Houston, Roya Orbisona. How do you choose them?
Well, we really go for iconic artists that have a presence today similar to the presence they had while they were alive. And you know, someone like Roya Orbisona, or an even better example is Marii Callas. I mean, Marii Callas in the opera and classical worlds today is still considered the best soprano that ever lived, still today. And she's been dead a long time. So, you know, we want people that are still alive in people's emotions and consciousness. That's really how we choose it. I mean, this is, after all, a business. So we want to make sure we choose people that the audience wants to see, or you know, otherwise we're having a good old time for no reason.
Sure. And now, can you tell me more about the technology that stands behind this whole concept? Can you walk us through? I wonder if you're using the footage, or are you recreating the whole experience and show from the scraps? How do you work with music? How do you work with lip syncing? I mean, there are a lot of questions, and of course, you can't tell us now in a few minutes how the technology works exactly in detail, but very, very broadly, generally, if you may walk us through the technology.
We do not use any existing footage. The only reason we use existing footage of the artist is for comparison, to make sure we get it right. You know, whether it's the movements or it's the look, you know, or the vibe even. That's what we use footage for. Otherwise, we create this out of whole cloth. I mean, literally, we start from nothing, and create it. And it's a very elaborate process that involves a lot of CGI work, a lot of shooting. We cast. You know, we do this the same way that, you know, they created Carrie Fisher in the Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
After she was dead. So we do it exactly the same way. And, you know, it's a very time-consuming, elaborate process. I mean, we don't, musically, it's so hard. For example, Marii Callas, I go back to, when Marii Callas recorded her music, and we try and use master tapes because we want the actual voice of the artist. When Marii Callas recorded, there wasn't even stereo. They used to get in a room And I mean, we use recordings from 1954, 65-year-old recordings.
Yeah.
So she used to get in a room with the orchestra live and do live takes, and go all the way through without stopping. And it was mixed live to mono. It wasn't even stereo. So we had to find a way to separate the orchestra from her voice so we could use her voice, because we have a live, with Marii Callas, we have a live 50-piece orchestra on stage. So it was a very elaborate process, and we developed some interesting techniques to do it. It was not inexpensive, as
Sure.
these things tend to go.
Yeah.
But that's what we do. We use the original recordings and strip out the music and just keep the vocal. With Whitney Houston, we thought, when we started out, we thought, oh, this would be much easier, because when she recorded, there obviously were tracks, right? So there was a separate stem for each sound. Well, it turns out that her masters were destroyed in the hurricane. They were in storage in New Orleans, and they were destroyed in a flood. So we had to go back through, we went through 100 live shows, picked out the bits that we wanted. We had to edit them together sound-wise, and then clean out the music so that we could have a live band on stage. It was very elaborate.
And you said that it took you 9 months to create Whitney Houston's show. Is it the whole process from the very beginning to the, I don't know, first show?
Literally, it's a year from the very beginning, from let's say when we have an agreement with the estate. From that moment forward, it's about a year.
Okay.
Because there's a lengthy, I mean, we had, we use a body double for part of it, like you do in a lot of visual effects stuff. And we had 900 people audition for that part.
That's a lot. That sounds a lot. Now I have a few questions on the holographic market in general, because your works, your productions are mostly, their goal is to entertain people. And I know that there are a lot of other holographic projects that are main goal, or they're just meant to preserve a memory or to educate. I know that there is a project of Holocaust survivors, for example, that are, their holograms are telling their stories. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think, in which direction this holographic market is going to? I mean, is it going all the ways to entertain, to educate, to do a lot of things, or is there a main direction that the market is developing?
I think that the market is developing in all of those areas simultaneously. The non-commercial market is going to move slower than the commercial market, because it always comes down to who's going to pay for it.
Sure.
Right. So, but I do believe in medicine. It's going to be, there are a lot of things that we are involved in that I can't really speak about. But there's medicine, museums. We think that there's a big opportunity in museums. We have a project that we're developing now with Jack Horner. Jack Horner is the world's foremost paleontologist. So he was the advisor to Steven Spielberg on all the Jurassic Park movies and so on. And we're doing the Jack Horner's World of Dinosaurs, where you're going to see life-size dinosaurs on stage with Jack talking to you about them. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. And then there's regular old animation. I mean, in terms of entertainment, we've tested a lot of different things, and animation looks amazing as a hologram. I've seen, the Minions, for example. I don't know if you're familiar with that film, but I've seen the Minions as holograms, and it's amazing.
Yeah. Are there, is it also going more in depth into interaction that people, I mean, the audience could interact with them more than just seeing the show?
That's a harder process. It is going there. I mean, my belief is that eventually this is going to be in your house.
Okay.
You know, you're going to turn on the television, instead of a television flat screen, you're going to have a 3D, you know, image in your house. I mean, the television made an attempt with that, with wearing glasses, 3D glasses, and that didn't really work. People didn't want to do that. This is a way to do. You don't need glasses or anything, and it'll, as the technology evolves, I think the techniques become like everything else. I mean, telephone. Look at what the telephone is now. It's not really a telephone anymore. It's actually a computer that you can talk to people on. You know, so we believe that this will really go in that direction.
Yeah.
And so you can have Whitney Houston in your house.
Well, I can have Whitney Houston in my house. I don't know about the dinosaurs. I mean, I hope we can choose what we have in our living room.
Right.
Yeah. I also want to ask you, of course, about the pandemic and the market. I mean, this is the whole new situation, new circumstances for everybody, and unpredictability is our new normal. And I know for everyone, it's very, very hard to foresee what's going to happen in the future, what's going to happen in midterm future. But I wanted to ask you if the pandemic had any impact for the holographic market. Oh, yeah. I mean, was it growing? Was it shrinking? Was it even possible to work on your productions, or are you more, I don't know, having some conceptual work and you have to wait for the pandemic to pass to actually, I don't know, produce? How did your company manage to cope with the pandemic and the lockdown restrictions?
Well, like most of the companies that do live shows, we were shut down. We had on Whitney, we had just launched the tour in February. We had 37 cities booked across Europe. We had played 12 shows in the United Kingdom, and then we got shut down in March. And it's been frankly devastating to us. I mean, but we are using, like most people, we're using this time for development, working on new projects, conceiving new ideas, those kind of things. But it's really hard. I mean, you know, when you depend on groups of people, large groups of people together, and they can't get together, you know, it's just really hard. And until the vaccine is completely distributed, we don't think we're going to be back to a quote normal until this time next year, really.
Yeah.
It's terrible, and filming is starting to happen again here in Los Angeles, television shows and movies and so on, but it's very slow. It's very difficult. For example, a typical 1-hour drama television show would be made in 7 days. Now they're 10, 11, 12 days because there's very distinct limitations on shooting periods and how close people can be and how many people can be in a room. So it's pretty intense.
Okay, but let's hope and let's think that the pandemic will pass and the vaccine will work. And then I think our listeners might be very much interested in a work sector. I mean, I think that this new creative sector, the holographic sector, will create new workplaces. And I wanted to ask you, what kind of experience or background do you have to have if someone would like to start working on holographic productions? Is it more artistic, or is it more programming, or maybe it's both, or maybe it's something else? Maybe you could tell us something about your story. I mean, what kind of background do you have to work on such productions?
Well, my story is, you know, without going into all the gory details, But I started out in the theater as a lighting designer. I lit many shows on Broadway and in Lincoln Center in New York and so on. And then I actually transitioned into the music industry, and I was designing shows for, Aerosmith and Barry Manilow, and this was in the 80s, Meatloaf, and the list goes on and on. And then through that, I got involved in artist management, and I wound up managing artists. And I managed Paula Abdul, for example, for a very long time. And there were many others. And through those endeavors, and then I've also produced television. I've produced feature films. So my main background is as a producer. And I think that's what you really need to be as a producer. But you have to have, I believe, a knowledge of the live theater in order to really communicate this experience, because you're telling the story in a different way than you tell a story on film. On film, you do a close-up of the eyes, and you do a close-up of from over the shoulder, and that's how you tell the story emotionally. Whereas here, you're sitting in an audience like you do in the live theater. So we try and use those basics as our driver.
If you could share which icon is next in line. I mean, I was wondering if you could tell us or just give us a hint. I know that you're now working on the dinosaurs, but are you already thinking about another music icon?
We have several actually that we're exploring, but I can't divulge who they are.
All right. And also, I wanted to ask you, during the whole conversation, I was looking at the background of your in your living room. Which concert hall is it, and is it any inspiration for your works?
Well, it's funny. I'm trying to get it so you guys can see it better. There we go. That is, gee, I'm not doing too well here, but that is the original Metropolitan Opera House in New York City. A photo taken from the stage of the audience, and it was 1930 that was.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
And it's definitely inspiring to me. I look at it every day, and it reminds me who I'm doing all this hard work for. All those people sitting in the audience.
Is it possible that some of your productions are going to be in Poland? Is it possible that we're going to see the show? Are you going to do it more internationally, or are you just for now going to stay in States?
No, I hope that you're going to get to see Whitney. You're going to get to see all our shows. We hope. That was certainly our plan until, this crazy disease came along. But that'll pass, and it'll just take longer. But you guys will get to see it for sure. Or if there's somebody out there that wants to bring us there, give us a call.
Yeah. I'd love to see this show. Okay, everybody. Thank you, Marty, very much. That was Marty Tudor from BASE Hologram Productions. I'm very, very happy that we managed to talk. It was great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.